Right now with summer hiking, it is important to keep in mind that you're going to wind up being exposed to a lot of insects. One of the problems with trying to judge how the insects will be where you're going to be hiking is if you go outside your front door and you have a 30-mile travel before you get to the place that you hike at, there might be a different setting. So if you go outside your door and it's windy and you'll assume that nothing will catch up to you, sometimes that'll change when you get to a forest preserve or deep woods or a ravine or a valley. So it's nice to be prepared. Usually the biggest nuisance is going to be mosquitoes because they bite and they irritate. And then you have West Nile virus. So the most important thing with mosquitoes is barrier protection. Now this is cotton and it's breathable, absorbable, and it wicks, but it also allows for penetration. So it's nice to have screens just in case. The face is usually the most exposed area, unless you have conversion pants where you take the legs off, or a short sleeve shirt. I always say tuck in your clothes so that you don't allow for any bugs to get into those cracks and crevices. You might think that you're safe if you just, for the most part, cover up, but the neck, the ears, the arms, the back of the arms are all exposed. This is a mosquito net. It's usually used for head. This is a nice small package. You can get this anywhere for $3. Essentially it goes over everything, or you can put it under your hat. But just to make it easy, I'll just apply it on just like this. So you're kind of covered up. You can cinch up with the drawstrings to make this tight around the neck, or tuck it into your shirt. This is one way. The only problem is sometimes the netting sits close to your face and you can still get bitten by mosquitoes. There's also a higher end that you can go with that has a brim. Outdoor Research is nice. I like their product. It comes in one piece and it has a bit of a, you can see this rim that comes with it. Sometimes you can buy it with a hat attached. I just picked up this. So essentially you see how this aluminum ring comes up and keeps it away from the face. So looks kind of weird, but you can't have mosquitoes touch against you, so kind of gives you a little bit of a barrier, and it also can be cinched up to either fit under your collar or on top of your clothes if you have. Real easy. It also tucks away in its own bag, in its own case, so it's portable, but it does add a little more weight for those of you who count the grams when you're outside. Clothing wise, if you bring a jacket, if you have breathability with cotton, you're asking for trouble, but it also keeps you cool. This is non-breathable and waterproof, but it also will heat you up. That's why I like the pit zips where you can ventilate, and some of the pockets will also be able to ventilate in case it gets too hot. You can also control how hot you get. If you have to put this on and you're in a very mosquito-ridden environment, that's fine. Sometimes to take care of mosquitoes and ticks, there is an insect repellent spray that you coat your clothes with 1 or 2 nights beforehand. You just let this dry, and it decreases the chances that ticks will be attracted to clothing as you brush across dense foliage or grass. The only problem is sometimes the components can be irritating to kids. So, as most of you know, I like to go with natural compounds if possible. The way I fight mosquito bites in particular would be with the use of essential oils. I like camphor and peppermint. Camphor does keep mosquitoes away from me in general. Peppermint, if I mix it in as well, same thing, but peppermint sometimes will burn skin or give you a sensation of a little bit of irritation. So using more camphor than peppermint, what I found the peppermint helps with is mosquito bites after you get stung. This really helps decrease the itch. The evaporative effect of peppermint also is very cooling to where you want to scratch so you don't scratch. I think there's so many products out there that I try to avoid DEET. DEET is typically what you'll find in your sprays, your offs. There's a battle in the media about whether DEET, that's D-E-E-T, is carcinogenic or causes problems. remember seeing a video once where somebody sprayed himself with DEET, and the next day or that night the child had a seizure. So believe it or not, you can get enough of these natural compounds there'll be so much out there, so many options out there, you might be able to avoid DEET, but you'll have to see how these things go. This is blended with lemongrass. This has a compound that is, it sounds like it's a scientific branch off of menthol. I was trying to remember what it was. This has its own product, and you'll notice in all of these it'll say 5% of the active ingredient, and it'll label it, and then it'll put 75 other ingredients, or 75% of other, and they won't label the other. So you have to kind of check out the websites that you of the companies and see exactly what they're touting that they have in their ingredients. The Environmental Working Group is a non-for-profit. They usually will score cosmetic products and give you a rating whether it's healthy or not, so you might want to check them out as well. The bottom line is that to make your hike this summer and into the fall until it gets cold out comfortable, especially for the kids, it's nice to be able to prepare for the bugs and mosquitoes, maybe even wasps and other things, the creepy crawlies, the ticks especially with Lyme disease, that you might encounter when you get into thick forest or dense brush. If you don't need it, then you don't need it, but it's nice to have it, because if you get into your hike halfway through and you start to be irritated, it makes for a terrible hike. You can certainly speed up your hiking to 3 to 4 miles an hour and hopefully leave the mosquitoes behind, but you're going to get heated up and that'll attract more mosquitoes. The question usually is what attracts mosquitoes, whether it's color, carbon dioxide you're breathing, or heat. I'm not sure which one is the biggest qualifier, but I just think that all three are involved, and that's where you take into account your clothing, you use the essential oils if you can, or you just try to come prepared and research the area that you're going to be going to, as far as the weather that presented the night before and the weather that's presenting right before your hike. Another thing to consider is if you notice a tick bite, if you can't just rub the tick off and it hasn't sunk its teeth in yet, then my suggestion is you leave it until you get home. Hopefully you're home within an hour or two. If you're out in the wilderness, get it off as soon as possible and try to keep it in a plastic bag or a container so that it can be analyzed when you get home. Sometimes if you give the tick to the doctor, we can send it off to the lab for specific identification. Usually if the tick hasn't engorged itself and it hasn't fattened up, and even if it's bitten and you've had to yank it off, we'll give 1 round of antibiotics as a preventative. Lyme disease is easy to treat nowadays, but if it truly is Lyme and you're going hiking in a Lyme infested area, you might have to get the 14 to 21 day treatment for Lyme, depending on your age group and depending on your risk factors. Lyme disease, after it's found, can be done. You can do blood tests or titers to see what your titer is at the time that you get treated, and then perhaps later on if you have symptoms of headaches, rashes, joint aches, fevers and chills. All those things could be from Lyme disease, but sometimes if the first test was negative, you get another test and the antibodies will be positive, and you might have to go see an infectious disease person. But bottom line is you keep the insect as best as possible. There's ways to capture the insect. I usually will get tweezers, or they're also known as roach clips, and you pinch right below where the head of the animal is, like the insect is, and you lift up quick. That usually gets the head off. If you leave the head in, which sometimes happens if the tick is very young, it usually gets pushed out by the body, and or the infection will degrade and eat up the head or the components of the head, but that does make for an infection later on.